Is there any hope, Gandalf, for Project Geekology? There never was much hope. Just a fool's hope. But here we are at Project Geekology episode 32, 5 weeks into our 6-part discussion of the fantastic Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's the extended edition cut. We're discussing the first half of Return of the King this week. I'm very happy I didn't just say Return of the Jedi. I was preemptively thinking about how many times I was going to say Return of the Jedi this week. It's Return of the King for sure. And my name is Dakota. I'm joined as always with
Anthony.
Yes, and we're very excited because not necessarily because we're coming to the tail end of our discussion of the Lord of the Rings, because I think as the show progresses, maybe we'll come back to Lord of the Rings every now and then and stuff. But it is kind of it feels like we're like coming to a head with this discussion, as well as the film itself is basically this big climactic battle that's happening on several different fronts. You know, everything seems like it's at a boiling point and it's ready to tip over.
Right.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking, obviously, the first half of Return of the King, right up until my boy Grond comes out. The only guy that gets a chance in this whole half of the movie. And he's not even like a corporeal being. He's just a device of war. We have some news that I think that we should cover this week that's actually extremely poignant for Lord of the Rings and stuff. But before we get into any of that, Anthony, what have you been up to this past week?
Oh, man. So I watched, obviously, the first half of The Return of the King. You know, I like to come into these discussions fresh off of a fresh watch.
Fresh off of a fresh watch. There's a lot of fresh right there.
It's got to be extra fresh. This week, I started playing through The Third Age.
Yo, that was such a good game.
It was so, yeah, I remember it being so fun. I've gotten into a few hours, and I'm coming up to the point to where you fight the Balrog.
Oh, so you're in Moria now?
Yes, I'm in Moria. I know I've sent you a couple of pictures of me fighting those like squid.
Yeah, so for those who don't know what the Third Age is, it came out in the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox generation of
I think 2004. I think it came out.
Yeah, so it was PS2 era, GameCube. I had it for GameCube personally.
Yeah, 2 discs. I remember that.
Yeah, those tiny GameCube discs, those are fun. But it basically kind of follows the account, if I remember correctly, it's a couple dudes who kind of follow in the footsteps of the main Fellowship party. They're like behind them. And
Right. So it's almost like a copy of the Fellowship. But yeah, they're a bit behind them. They're trying to. The story is at least at the point that I'm at, Barethor, which is somebody that is in the army of Gondor. He's like a captain of Gondor, and he's trying to find Boromir. And so along the way, he comes across an elf enchantress or an elf witch who was in the who is in the service of Galadriel, named Idriel. You come across a Dunedain ranger called Elegost, and he was one of Aragorn's like fellow, rangers.
What are the chances that all of these like close relatives of each of the companions of the Fellowship are just in walking distance?
Right, and then you have was it Hadhod, which is a dwarf.
I like how they make each of them sound like they belong to each of the races or like peoples. Like Barethor is very close to Denethor of Gondor, and Elegost kind of a similar like syllable count to, or it's the same syllable count to Aragorn and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
So yeah, it's been fun playing through that game. They really do need to remaster some of these games. I would love to play through like the Return of the King and the Two Tower games.
I forget, because I don't think I ever finished the Third Age. Does it go through the entire trilogy, or is it just following the Fellowship of the Ring?
I'm pretty sure it goes through the entire trilogy.
Man, I gotta get into that.
Because
How are you playing it?
So I do have an old copy of it for like the PlayStation. So I've actually been I was like, since I own a copy, so I've been emulating it.
So basically, you're a pirate.
Not when you own a copy.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's legal to download things illegally when you've bought it. So what else have you been up to besides the Third Age and the Return of the King? Let me guess. You can't remember. I'm telling you, you need to do like a little notes app. What's wrong with you? That's your homework this week, is like start a notes app in your phone, and you need to like write down what you do that's not work related.
That's not work related. Hey, what was it? I named a couple of things.
You named a couple things? What do you mean?
Third Age, you know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I picked up a couple of books.
Tell me about it.
That I want to read through. And they're actually not, it's not Star Wars, it's not a fantasy thing. One is called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, and it goes pretty much into the making of video games, and like one of the video games that are mentioned or talked about in that book that I'm actually really interested in getting to that part is Star Wars 1313.
Dude, what happened?
The coolest looking game that never came out.
Because every now and then, like, the creators of that game or like some concept artists or whatever, they drop pictures from 1313, which was a Star Wars bounty hunter game that takes place in like the lower levels of Coruscant.
Right, level 1313.
And it's like the seedy underbelly, and yeah, it just looks amazing.
Right, and then another one, it's called Press Reset, and that one goes into the video game industry and talks about crunch and a little bit more in depth with that, and how it can be pretty tough working in the video game industry. And it has like the author talked to several people that work in this industry.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, the author is a video game journalist, so this is what he does.
Apparently, the new Ratchet and Clank game that's coming out, it's being praised, not because it's a good game or anything. I have no idea if it's a good game or not, but it's being praised because there was no crunch time.
Oh, nice.
The entire thing was a 9 to 5 experience, which is supposedly...
It's rare.
So rare in the video game industry that it's being applauded, which is really sad because, people need to live. It's not all about like making the best possible game. It kind of depresses me a little bit, the amount of hours that go into games that people don't appreciate.
Right.
Because I know for certain that I don't even notice when I'm playing a game and I'm enjoying it. Oh wow, I breezed through this level that people took months creating. It's kind of sad when you think about it that way, but yeah, that's interesting. So did you got any other books or? No,
those two I grabbed because I decided I wanted to go through and read something that was something different. I mean, it's something along the same vein. I mean, I love video games, so it's about a topic that I'm interested in, but it's different. It's not a fictional story, right?
Right.
Which, I mean, I love. But I was like, let me expand a little bit and start incorporating books that are not fictional, which there's nothing wrong with. If that's all you like to read, there's nothing wrong, because reading in general is just a great thing to do, no matter what it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally agree.
But yeah, so that's what I've been up to. Yeah, I forgot to mention that I grabbed those. I actually grabbed those yesterday, so.
Nice. Yeah, let me know how those go. I'm curious about them. Are they recent books? Like, have they come out recently, or?
The Blood, Sweat, and Pixels came out in 2017. The Press Reset one came out last month.
Okay, it's cool.
And yeah, so I'm pretty excited to jump into that and to read something different. I mean, it's like I said, it's about video games. If you were to
pick up one of the two right now and start reading, which would it be? Press Reset or Blood, Sweat, and Pixels?
Maybe Press Reset.
just because it's so recent?
It's recent, and maybe I feel like if I understood the industry a little bit more when I read about the making of some of these video games, I'll have another lens to look at it, to like really truly appreciate, like, wow, these people really like worked hard on this.
Yeah.
I mean, which I already know, but I feel like I'll see it a bit different if I go with the newer one first.
Right. I agree with that.
So yeah, that's what I've been up to this week. How about you, Dakota? What do you have going on besides, working on the new Lionsgate studio?
Oh, apparently, actually, funny, I wasn't going to bring that up, but apparently they plan on filming something in August, so we have to, speaking about crunch time, I might have to start working some overtime just to finish the construction job that we're doing. We were going crazy fast on, I think it was Thursday. I was so shot by Friday. Still laying down pipe. It's still in the very early stages. There's 3 different studios. I did find out that it was originally supposed to be 5 studios. Like if you look up Lionsgate Studios in Yonkers, they were originally planning to make 5 different lots so that they could record in. They pushed it down to 3. I don't know if that's a pandemic thing or what, or I don't know if they decided to combine several of them and make them larger. Make the existing lots larger, which is possible because they are pretty big lots. So, but anyway, enough of that. Apparently, they're filming something in August, or that's the goal.
Oh wow!
So
maybe maybe that right now the target goal is 3, so that they can get things operational, and then maybe they'll expand.
It's kind of hard to expand in the area though. I mean, just because of the buildings that are around it, and you're right next to the train station, so you can't just rip up the train tracks and stuff. So it's
destroy them.
Yeah, right. But it's a learning curve for sure. I'm not used to being on jobs where it's just a pure construction site from the ground up. I'm usually there, retrofitting a building for another occupant or whatever. But this is a whole new construction. But
nice.
Outside of my electrical work, watched Loki.
Yes.
First episode of that. Have you seen it?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
That's gonna be a whirlwind, bro. I can't wait. And the funny thing about Loki is it feels like it's written for me, because I love dissecting timelines, and the whole show is literally about setting the timeline straight. So I'm kind of thrilled when it comes to that. And I just made a video yesterday that seems to be pretty well received. It's basically a Loki episode 1 breakdown, and I talk about some of the Easter eggs in it. So I'm excited about that.
Well, of course, it has something to do with timelines, and that's your MO.
It's literally 30% of my entire channel is basically views from my timeline videos. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal. I kind of have to stay on top of it. Who am I if not the MCU timeline guy, right? What is my life worth?
Well, they say, didn't you get mentioned in? You got mentioned in an article, right? About was it about a timeline, or was it about something else?
Oh, a guy who's been following me on Twitter for a good while, actually. He's a writer for Screen Rant, and he mentioned, I guess I said something in my Eternals trailer breakdown
that's
that
right.
He enjoyed, or that he didn't think of when he was breaking down the trailer. So he wrote a separate article basically talking about the points that I brought up in my trailer breakdown.
That's right.
So that was cool. It's always fun to be noticed by some of the bigger trades out there in the space. I finished listening to Dark Disciple, the Christie Golden book that adapts the Katie Lucas 8-episode arc that was supposed to be in Season 7 of the Clone Wars. And I understand why it was never included. And, the big reason is because Season 7 was canceled before it was originally intended to air. But then they decided to, in a publishing effort, finish those stories, specifically Dark Disciple, in a novel format. And so Katie Lucas's script, that's George Lucas's daughter, was transferred into a novel by Christy Golden. And it's a fantastic book. Dude, it's probably the saddest of all Star Wars novels by a long shot. And I've read most of them, so at least the canon stuff I've read most of.
That one was a good one, and it's a fun audiobook to listen to for the most part. I think that was the first audiobook that I had listened to, Star Wars wise.
Yeah.
And I was amazed with the sounds and just the production of that audiobook. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, for the longest time, audiobooks was literally just somebody reading the book to you.
And it still is for the most part.
Right. But at least for the Star Wars ones, and there's most likely many others, but the Star Wars ones are literally like a production. It's listening to a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it starts with the, you know, and then it actually goes into like a long time ago, and then you hear the spaceships going by, or like the ambiance of whatever planet you're on, or if you're in space, you know, the technical whirring of the ship and stuff.
Right.
It's really cool. It's just like the ambiance and the special effects, and occasionally music for emotional scenes or scenes of like threat for the characters. You get all of that in the production mix, and they do a really good job. And it's every single Star Wars project, even like the short stories that they adapt to audiobook.
Right.
But yeah, so I did that. Dark Disciples, good. What's really funny is they mention 1313 a lot in the novel. It's the place where Quinlan Vos and Obi-Wan Kenobi are supposed to meet every now and then to discuss what Asajj Ventress is up to. I could tell based on like the way it was written, this was around the time that they were making the game, so it was probably going to connect in some way, shape, or form, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It does seem very... They did... there are some like tendrils that are set up to like connect to the video game, and you can tell that they set it up to be expanded upon.
And I'm sure it would have even connected to the Star Wars live action show that George Lucas was planning. You know, I think he had something like 50 scripts written for his live action Star Wars show that would have taken place in the Coruscant underworld, which probably would have...
Right. I mean, they have like a little bit of footage of it too.
Yeah, they have like test footage and stuff, and it looks interesting. I would love to see more of that. If it's if it's even like half the quality of like Clone Wars writing, I'm sure it would be a fantastic addition to Star Wars. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Let's move away from what I've been up to, and I think it's really important that we talk a little bit about.
One thing.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good. How have you guys been on Clone Wars? Where are you at?
Oh, I'm trying to think. We didn't watch too much this week, but we're like mid-season 5 now. So we're coming up on the end of it, but it's so good. Yeah. We're just taking it like a couple episodes at a time. We're trying to do like maybe like if we sit down to watch it, we'll watch in like an arc of episodes, and then we'll pick up. We did we watched the Young Padawans arc recently.
Oh yeah.
There was literally one of the funniest scenes in like all of Star Wars is when the Padawans dress up as like circus freaks, and they're trying to infiltrate Hondo Anaka's thing to save Ahsoka, and Hondo's all drunk, and they get Hondo to like walk up to the plank, and the other guy like jumps on the other side of the plank, and Hondo thinks this is part of like the show that they're putting on, and he gets like flung into the air, and he's like all like weightless. He goes, "I'm flying," and then he just crashes into a wall. It's literally the most like perfectly set up joke, and it's good because the joke is set up over the course of like several minutes. But yeah, I love that. So we're enjoying Clone Wars slowly. What's great about Dark Disciple is I don't know if Asajj Ventress shows up anymore in the rest of Clone Wars, just because Dark Disciple seems to pick up after she like teams up with Boba Fett and Bosk and all them for a little bit, and then breaks away, and then that's kind of where this picks up, and that happened, I guess, in the early part of season 5, I think. So it's interesting. If you're watching Clone Wars and you want to know when to read Dark Disciple, I would say, just finish Clone Wars first and then jump into Dark Disciple.
I absolutely love Clone Wars, especially once you get to the later seasons.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Right. All right. So I don't know who or like what trade originally picked this up, but I think this is a really cool news outlet story that is making the rounds. And it's really funny that it's coming out now, because we were literally talking last week on episode 31 about where the heck the Rohirrim were during the Battle of Helm's Deep. We know that they came in like just in the nick of time, but if the elves could show up before them, if all these things could have happened before, where was Éomer and his people during the Battle for Helm's Deep? So this is a new anime that's coming out. Let's read the article. Lord of the Rings anime feature fast-tracked by New Line Cinema and Warner Bros. Animation. So New Line Cinema is returning to Middle-earth. We're reading an article by Variety. The studio behind the feature film trilogies The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit is partnering with Warner Bros. Animation on the original anime theatrical feature, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, which is amazing sounding, so we'll look into it. The standalone feature will depict the bloody saga behind Helm's Deep, the fortress depicted in The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and the man in whose honor it's named, Helm Hammerhand, the legendary king of Rohan, who spent much of his reign locked in a prolonged and costly war. Oh, so it's not even about... My bad. I thought it was about the Rohirrim coming to Helm's Deep's aid. This is about, I guess, Helm Hammerhand, which is pretty cool. Veteran anime filmmaker Kenji Kamiyama, who helmed Netflix's Ultraman anime series, will direct the film from a screenplay by Jeffrey Addis and Will Matthews. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, Joseph Chow from the Blade Runner Black Lotus TV series is producing. While the filmmaking team is new to the Lord of the Rings movie franchise, the project is intended to be connected to director Peter Jackson's 6 Middle-earth films based on the books of J.R.R. Tolkien. Philippa Boyens, who won an Oscar for the screenplay for The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, which is what we're talking about today, is consulting on the project, which will also draw its aesthetic and narrative inspiration from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The War of the Rohirrim is not, however, connected to Amazon's gargantuan Lord of the Rings series that is deep into production in New Zealand, because I think that's supposed to be a totally different... I don't think it's connected to Peter Jackson's movies. That project is set in the second age of Middle-earth millennia before the events of the feature films. Helm Hammerhand's reign, by contrast, unfolded roughly 260 years before the Lord of the Rings movies. With Amazon's series looming, New Line and Warner Animation are fast-tracking their feature. With animation, maybe I should say this like with the announcer voice. With Amazon's series looming, New Line and Warner Animation are fast-tracking their feature, with animation at Sola Entertainment and voice casting already underway. The 6 Middle-earth features have grossed over $5.8 billion worldwide for Warner Bros., and it would appear the studio is not content ceding its claim to Tolkien's creative territory to Amazon. All of us at New Line feel a deep affinity for the extraordinary worlds J.R.R. Tolkien created, so the opportunity to dive back into Middle-earth with the team at Warner Bros. Animation is a dream come true. Caroline Blackwood, Warner Bros. Picture Group Chief Operating Officer, and Richard Brenner, New Line Cinema President and Chief Creative Officer, said in a statement. What a title, man. Fans know Helm's Deep as the stage for one of the greatest battles ever to put to film, and with many of the same creative visionaries involved, and the brilliant Kenji Kamiyama at the helm, we couldn't be more excited to deliver a fresh vision of its history that will invite global audiences to experience the rich, complex saga of Middle-earth in a thrilling new way. Alright, so this is just flavor text at this point. You got the gist. We're getting a new movie based on the Rohirrim, taking place 260 years before the Lord of the Rings trilogy, following King Helm Hammerhand. What a name.
I know, right?
I know. What do you think about that?
It's pretty cool. I guess it's going to expand more on the story. It looks like the Lord of the Rings is now going to be like a Star Wars, it seems like, where they're
Maybe
expanding on the universe. Because, I mean, when was the last that we've had anything from the Lord of the Rings outside of the movies based off of, the books? I mean, those things were already established for how many years? I mean, we had video games based on the movies. The only thing that was like really different was the Third Age.
Yeah, I mean, they every couple years there's a new book or something that's released that has some connection to Tolkien's writings, like unfinished writings about this or that. I think a new one's coming out this year called The Nature of Middle-earth. I might be wrong with the title, but that's essentially it, like the natural world of Middle-earth and like what Tolkien had to say about it. So every now and then we get a little bit of new insight and stuff like that. I know I have a couple books that also take place in the Middle-earth world that we just never saw. We know the Silmarillion is the stories of the first two ages. Then we have... Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. I don't know if this is based on Tolkien's writings or if it's just someone jumping on board and writing something totally new for the Lord of the Rings universe, which is kind of cool if that's the case, because that basically opens up the doors to more stories in Middle-earth and stuff.
Right. Like, I haven't read a lot of the extra Star Wars stuff, a lot of the extra Lord of the Rings stuff, but it would be cool if they expanded more on the evil men, like the Haradrim, the Easterlings.
Yeah, so the Haradrim are actually from the south. That's what...
Right.
They say the north. I don't know. It's one of those poles.
I think they're from the south.
Yeah, and then the Easterlings, I'm, just gonna guess from the east. But yeah, so evil men come from all corners of the earth to help Saruman and Sauron to, defeat the kingdoms of Middle-earth. So it's interesting. And there's a lot going on in the background of Lord of the Rings that you're not really understanding, because you'd really need a good grasp of the world around you to figure it out. Right.
And the reason why I would love them to expand on those, those civilizations, it's like, okay, these are people, but they're siding with Sauron. Why? For what reason?
Yeah. Alrighty. So I think now is a good time to jump into the actual discussion of Return of the King, at least the first half, because we are already 35 minutes into our recording, and we have a lot to say. So
yes, we
follow... I forget how it actually starts. I forget if it starts with Frodo and Sam or if it starts with...
Sméagol.
Does this start with Sméagol?
Yeah, his like growth into...
Oh, you're right. Oh my gosh, how could I forget that? It's like one of the most fascinating scenes.
It's fascinating and sad.
It's a scene. There's a lot of scenes in Return of the King that are just heartbreaking, and you don't want to relive them. Like this, we'll talk about a couple of them in this episode. But there's a lot of like just uncomfortable moments that you have to like watch to enjoy this movie, and this is one of them. You have to see potentially like two kinsmen fight each other over an object in the first couple minutes of the movie. So what's cool about the scene with an early looking Smeagol before he's deformed and stuff, and his friend Deagle, or maybe brother, I don't know, they have very similar names. True. Is we start to see the ring wake up. So the last that we saw the ring was 3,000 years ago, it was at this point 2,500 years ago, when Isildur was shot dead in the river. You know, he jumps into the river to try to escape, and he puts the ring on, but the ring slips off his finger, realizing that it doesn't want to go with Isildur, and Isildur dies because of it. Right. So the ring lives in the river for 2,500 years, basically, and then Deagle is pulled into the water by some fish. What's interesting is that you can hear the music kind of... I almost like struggle to call it music, but it's almost like a sound effect where it's like an eerie like call that the ring makes, and it took me a while to realize it's actually the sound of the ring drawing people out. But it plays all the way through Fellowship and Two Towers and stuff. Whenever there's like a draw to whenever the ring wants something, there's like a...
Right, like it's influencing the
It's
moment.
like an ethereal sound that it makes, and it's really interesting.
Right,
and
like
this is one of those moments.
Like it's so much more than just a sound effect. It's the sound of the ring. The ring is actually making a sound.
Right. Yeah. And we don't know that it actually is, but it's basically like how people perceive it.
And like it goes from... Yeah, the music goes from this like really happy-go-lucky, you know, almost like the Shire, you know, like we're like, you know, like hobbits.
Yeah.
And it gets really dark really quick.
Very, very quick. So Deagle is pulled into the river. I'm pretty sure the ring was basically pulled the fish to pull Deagle to find it. You know, because it's been waiting long enough. And Deagle grabs the ring, and obviously the ring is pulling on both of them. You know, it's calling out to both of them to wield it, to fight for it. It's like a thing of evil, and both of them basically lose their minds over this item. Was it actually Smeagol's birthday? Was he lying? Nobody knows. But yeah, and it ends up with Smeagol killing Deagle over the ring and being cast away from his river folk to live a life in the mountains as some creature.
Yeah, and then it shows his slow deformation
into Smeagol.
You're right,
or Gollum, I should say.
Well, yeah, into Gollum. And it's
one
so
of the
creepy.
Scenes, yeah, it is. There are some like really creepy like practical effects there. But one of the coolest scenes in that little transformation is looking at his eyes. You know, because they start getting glassy as he becomes more of a monster. And then there's a scene where he closes his eyes, and it's just like normal looking eyes, but you start to see like the face shape change a little bit. And it's almost like the eye sockets are growing, and he opens the eyes again, and he has Gollum's eyes. It's the weirdest thing, but it's a really cool effect. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but it's something that's worth like going back and watching.
Yeah, it's crazy. That scene it's a hard scene to watch.
Because you know the sympathetic side of Smeagol is there. You know, he's still, as Luke would say, there's still good in him. You know, but you got to find it anyway. So let's jump off of that. Although it is a really cool moment.
Yeah. So the moment almost it was like a recap of what happened to Gollum, but then they almost made it almost like a dream form where kind of like with how they started the Two Towers.
You know, it's actually an important thing that they did that and then went to Sam and Frodo, because Sam and Frodo aren't so different from Smeagol and Deagle. Obviously, they have much better character than both of those hobbit-like creatures. And Frodo has much more resilience to the ring than Smeagol does. And Sam, I don't know if he has actually a pull towards the ring, or the ring ever tries to get into Sam's possession, but he never fights Frodo over the ring, which, you know, it just proves that Sam has kind of the best character of all. He really is the hero of the story, Sam.
He really is. And we'll talk more about that next episode. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Why we believe this.
I mean, it's not even a belief. It's like they show it. But when it comes to the comparison of Smeagol and Deagle and Sam and Frodo, it's important that they showed that what can happen to good friends when the ring is involved. And by the middle point of this movie, we do have the separation of Sam and Frodo because of the ring and the wily tricks of Gollum, you know, preying on Frodo's mentality.
Right. And like Sam is he's so suspect, and I mean he even hears Gollum speaking of, you know, wanting to kill them. Yeah.
We'll get into that in a little bit, though, because I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. But so they're still on their way to Mordor. It's really kind of like a cool little enclosure that they found to sleep in.
Right.
I don't even know what it is. Is it like a sewer drain? Is it just a statue that's built in the middle of nowhere? A shrine of some sort? Who knows?
Yeah, and then like the days are starting to get darker because they're getting closer to Mordor.
There's a great little scene as they're walking that kind of brings hope back into focus as the days get darker, where the sun shines through and they see the head of a statue on the ground, and there's like a wreath of flowers growing on its head, and it almost looks like hair or a crown or something, and it glows the flowers a little bit, and Sam, being the gardener that he is, would notice something like that. And that's another thing, like back in the first part we talked about how hobbits are lovers of all things that grow, you know, so that's something that the hobbits would notice, is like the beauty inherent in, you know, a decapitated head with a glowing crown of flowers on it. And it's just a nice little moment before it gets dark again.
Right. Well, it's even Sam was like, he's like, hey, look, he has his crown.
Yeah, it's nice. It's just a wholesome little moment. There's so many wholesome moments with Sam and Frodo, but anyway.
Yes, they do.
Let's now jump over to Isengard. We have the crew, Legolas, Gimli, Aragorn, and Gandalf now, and Theoden, coming from Rohan or Helm's Deep to basically see what's going on with Isengard. You know, their fight isn't over until it's over. You know, the guy who instigated the attack on Helm's Deep and of men in general, Saruman, needs to pay for his crimes. So they go up to Helm's Deep, or they go up to his Isengard, and basically they find Merry and Pippin like enjoying roast pork or salted pork and tobacco leaf, and Gimli's all jealous, and you have Gandalf saying hobbits, like
I know.
He's basically saying, like, I should have known.
Yeah, I mean, they love a good feast. They love to eat. They love to smoke. Come on, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that line from Gimli was funny, where he's essentially like, you know, we've been afraid for you this whole time, and then we find you feasting and smoking.
The salted pork is particularly good, or something like that.
And then, yeah, Gimli, like, changes his tune so quick. He's like, salted pork. Because they probably haven't eaten for a while, too. Now that you think about
they were battling for the past, I mean, how many calories did that burn? Yeah, so they're probably starving, and yeah. What I love about that interaction on Isengard is the actual interaction with Saruman. And there's a lot of really cool lore things that happen that the average viewer wouldn't know. Well, I mean, Saruman comes out fighting. He tries to throw a fireball down at Gandalf, and again, he's using that magic that like booms his voice so that all can hear down below, even though he's just talking normally. It's pretty cool. But one thing that I thought about this time to look up, because it's something that I've been like confused about in the past, is Gandalf goes, "Saruman, your staff is broken." And he says it like in the past tense, and then Saruman's staff literally blows up in his hands. And I looked it up. I'm like, how exactly does Gandalf do that? Because that's not necessarily his power set. And it's basically because he's a Maya, or he was there in the beginning of creation with Eru Ilúvatar, the basically the god of this universe. He was one of the ancient beings who was there for the great music. The great music is so the first couple chapters of the Silmarillion are really just beautiful poetry. It's hard to get into because it's like not Lord of the Rings by any shape or fashion, besides it being the creation of this universe. But it's basically talking about the beauty of music and how it created all life and all the worlds of Middle-earth and stuff. And the great music is essentially creation incarnate. And it's like singing creation into being. And that power is something that the Maya, the angels of this universe, can wield. And 5 wizards, 5 of those Maya, came down to Earth. Gandalf is one of them. And he has that ability occasionally to use the great music. It's a power set that he has to make something happen, or to, in this case, it's destruction. You know, he's like, it's almost like a prescripted line of his. Saruman, your staff is broken. That's not necessarily him. Apparently that's Eru Ilúvatar casting judgment on Saruman at that point.
Right.
So it's just cool background knowledge that I feel like is little flavor text for the next time you guys view Return of the King, because that's something that I didn't know previously, but it makes sense from the last time I read Silmarillion and stuff. It's just a really cool little tidbit there.
No, it is awesome. The Lord of the Rings has a lot of lore to it, and some of it's unexplored lore that would really be cool to be expanded upon, you know?
Yeah, and I love that, and we talked about like what Tolkien intended with his writings from the start, and we don't know how much that changed from his first production, or his first book in The Hobbit to when he passed away, but we can kind of guess that he had a pretty good idea of his world based on all of the subtle nuances that he put into being, like why they didn't use the eagles and stuff to get to Mordor and all that. So there's a lot of that in Lord of the Rings, and it's pretty cool.
Nice.
It is kind of weird that like Saruman's just holding the Palantir, just like, I got this, you don't.
And then it's like what's a pretty like astonishing moment in that scene is how Theoden seemingly has like forgiven Wormtongue for what he's done. Yeah,
it's an interesting little bit, because just a couple days ago, like maybe a week ago, he was basically just a puppet of Wormtongue. Yeah. He does pardon Grima in that moment, but Grima does the thing that they don't want him to do, which is to kill Saruman. And that's why I assume that's why Legolas shot him down.
Speaking of Grima and how he had made Theoden his puppet, in the last movie, in Battle for Middle Earth, you obviously you can play the different heroes, And then you could play the heroes and you could play the villains. There's 2 different storylines.
Oh, is Grima one of them?
And Grima is one of the villains that you can play. And one of his abilities that he has is like really cool. And that's in a specific range. He can influence characters from the other team. So, say that you're fighting against Rohirrim or soldiers or whatever, you can influence those soldiers to fight for you.
Oh, cool.
And so that's one of his abilities that he has. And I mean, obviously it's really useful. Dangerous. Yeah, right. It's useful when you're playing the villains, because if you're playing against soldiers of Rohan that are upgraded, because you can upgrade your kits and stuff to be like a lot stronger. Your weapons can be a lot stronger, and your defense is a lot stronger. So if you're playing against an AI, or I would play against people online, that was really useful because you could turn their own armies against them, essentially.
That's cool.
So yeah, that was a cool little tidbit that I wanted to talk about from those games. I absolutely loved Battle for Middle-earth. I played the second one for a little bit. I thought that one was pretty good, but there's something about the first one that I liked a lot more.
Cool. Yeah, I never got into the battle. Actually, no, that's not true. I was never good at the Battle of Middle-earth. But anyway, so another interesting line in that little segment is when Gandalf comes to Isengard, Treebeard's like, "Hello, young wizard," or something like that. But he calls him young.
He says, "Young Master Gandalf."
Young Master Gandalf, you're right. And I thought about it. I'm like, wait, Gandalf is super old. How old is Treebeard? Gandalf is like 3,000 something years old. Treebeard is literally 17,000 years old. So Treebeard's been around since like the beginning of Middle-earth and stuff. So anyone will be just a baby to him. Do you think that Gollum would hurt a fly?
If that fly had his ring.
And Frodo certainly does have Gollum's ring. There's a cool effect. I mean, I love what they do with Gollum. They really put a lot of thought into it. But there's a moment when he's talking to himself by the lake. He's talking about how Gollum and Smeagol are talking about how they're going to handle the hobbits. Are they gonna let her do it? Are they gonna wring their neck? Whatever. And as they're talking about this, you can tell who's speaking based on like the dilation level of the pupils. And it's really cool, like when it changes from Gollum to Smeagol, his facial expressions change, his like muscles relax, and his pupils dilate. They open up quite a bit. So it's a cool effect, and it's just like a little detail that they decided to put in there for the viewers, just to like be more empathetic towards the character of Smeagol and not Gollum, obviously.
Right.
They'll take the ring for theirs once the hobbitses are dead.
Are dead.
He really didn't think that one through.
I know, says it like really loud. Like whenever he's like plotting or doing something, he's really loud. Right.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly got some problems, but Sam overhears him, and Sam is ready to like kill him before.
Yeah, of course.
He kills them. Self-preservation and stuff, and obviously he cares for Frodo, and he doesn't want to see their mission stopped by Gollum, basically. And he realizes that Gollum is no longer like on their side. So for the rest of the movie, we have Sam basically fighting with the concept that I know this guy is going to betray us.
At some point, yeah.
But they need him now. And Frodo is so lost, like he is just in a stupor at this point, like because of the ring. He's so lost in the mindset of being the ring bearer that he can't realize that Sam is telling the truth.
Right.
Or even if he is telling the truth, Frodo is so hell-bent on trying to give Smeagol another chance, I guess. I don't know. But clearly, at least the first half of this, Frodo is on Gollum's side, and Sam's just here for the ride in terms of like what Frodo's thinking about it.
Yeah, which is sad, because as the viewer, you're seeing all this stuff happen, and you're kind of like, Frodo, wake up! Like, do you not see that this guy is, not on your side? But to think about it, and what you said, that Frodo is so wrapped up in what needs to be done, and Frodo has, even in that beginning scene, Frodo, when they were rationing the food, Sam was rationing the food, and he's talking about the return trip home, and Frodo hadn't even thought about that. Like, in his mind, we're gonna die.
Yeah, he's kind of like a berserker going to Helm's Deep. His whole thing is like, I'm going there, and that's it.
Right. And in his mind, like, that in the behind the scenes, his mind has got so much going on. He has the ring influencing him. He's battling his own fears, his own anxiety, and he's got so much going on. That's why he's like so weak. It's not just the ring, it's so many other things. And that's why the squad, like the fighting between Gollum and Sam, is just so much. And Frodo, and I don't think that, I think at like some point Frodo was a bit skeptical of Gollum, but he's gotten so wrapped up in giving him a second chance, and he's known that Gollum, or that Sam hasn't really liked Gollum for like the longest time, and he's being influenced by the ring, so his judgment's just not all there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they both treat Gollum like a dog.
Yeah, they do.
They, come Gollum, follow master, stuff like that. And the fact that Smeagol or Gollum calls Frodo master, and then he calls Sam the fat hobbit, is just kind of it's indicative of like the way Gollum will treat Sam versus how he's like trying to gain favor with Frodo, because he realizes that Frodo can be influenced and Sam can't.
Yeah. It's funny that you say what Gollum calls Sam. Yeah, remember when he was like screaming? He's like, he's a horrid fat hobbit.
I love when like after Sam attacks him, he's just pretending to be freaking out. I mean, obviously he is freaking out a little bit because his plan was just potentially thwarted. But he's acting like the part so that Frodo can believe him and not Sam, as if like Sam just attacked him out of the blue. I always thought, and I don't know if this is just me, when Gollum says, "I wouldn't hurt a fly," and then he touches his head and looks at his hands, it almost looks like there's like a blood spatter from like a fly in his hand. But I realized that it's not that. It's because Sam hit him with a rock a couple like moments ago, and there was no fly there in the footage. Basically, if I remember it correctly, how do you take that scene where he like looks at his hand and starts screaming?
Pretty much to further influence Frodo against Sam.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue talking about Frodo and Sam, because their story is so divorced from the rest of the Fellowship story that I think that we can talk about Frodo and Sam and like their entire journey throughout this first half without jumping back and forth. So
right.
They continue going. Obviously, Sam loses this fight. Frodo's siding with Gollum because for whatever reason Gollum has warped the way that Frodo sees Sam's relationship with him. And yeah, so they go into the stairs, I think, of Kirithungol.
Oh yeah, that was like, that moment was kind of like creepy. Those like stairs, but before that happens, man, there's like so we We're talking just the Frodo and Sam side right now, right?
I figure, yeah, because we're already like talking about their thematic like change throughout the first half of this movie.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, then at that point we're getting close to their side of the story. Like we're almost done.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're over by Minas Morgul.
Right.
And man, that scene is like really crazy where that like beam of light goes up into the sky.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that when we go back to Gandalf and them. But at this point,
well, I mean, you see it with them there too.
Yeah. But that's got to be one of the coolest sound effects that I've ever experienced in like a movie theater, because it's like an oscillating like whirlwind of noise, and then it just stops, and then it's just like a huge beam of light that goes. It's super cool.
Right. Yeah. The armies, or like some of the armies of Mordor, come out from Minas Morgul.
And this is when, at least Gandalf mentions the fact that Sauron hasn't released his, his greatest weapon yet, which is the Witch King of Angmar, the one who gave Frodo that pierced his heart with the Morgul blade. And it's cool. I mean, it's not cool, but it's interesting that Frodo feels it even now. Like
he still feels the blade
months after the fact.
Especially like when he does that.
He starts screaming.
Right. That like screech. He feels the blade even more, and it's crazy to think that like he was probably feeling like he got stabbed again.
Yeah, you could see the agony in his face. Just absolute fear. And I think about some of the actors in this movie. They all like took it to the next level. With Christopher Lee, like he was just acting super crazy and deranged in this movie, and he knows that he's gonna die. Blah blah blah. So he plays up this huge Saruman role, and in this scene we have Elijah Wood, who's like literally like on the verge of like tears because of whatever pain Frodo is feeling in the moment, and the fear of listening to the shriek of the Nazgul. Which, another thing, like I think that they found a really cool sound for the Nazgul, because it's almost so unbearable to listen to. It's almost like someone scratching on a chalkboard.
Yeah, it affects everyone. The hobbits may be a little worse because they're smaller. You know what's really good, and you see this in a lot of the extras too. They like some of the extras did really good job. The screeching, and you can tell that it's high pitched, and where it's unbearable for them to listen to. But it's also inciting fear. So you see that like that kind of pain, but also like fear, like, oh my gosh, they're here kind of thing.
Yeah, because it's like a power that you can't reckon with,
Right.
You don't want to be in the way of these wraiths, because they are going to just wreck house. And we see that again and again, especially in Gondor. But all right, let's pivot and go back to Frodo and Sam, because we kind of lost our way a little bit there. But they're going up the staircase, and it's interesting you mentioned that, or not a staircase, but it's like a literal vertical stair wall.
Right. Like there's stairs there, but it's more like a rock wall that you're climbing
for like a mile. Yeah, I can't even imagine, dude. I'd be like, yeah, I've failed. I can't go to Mordor anymore.
and I don't know if you noticed this, and I'm pretty sure you did, but they get up pretty high on that cliff, and they're resting, and they're like, I mean, they're really really high, and
they're above the tower,
and you could still see orcs leaving Minas Morgul. Like there's so many leaving. I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's an endless army.
Right.
They've just been churning out orcs left and right. Yeah, how do they make them? Now that I'm thinking about it. Because you never see female orcs or goblins or a
magic.
Yeah, well, we know that the Urukai are made like from the ground, so they're like literally grown like little things like that. Are the rest of the orcs also like that? I'm curious now. But let's. It's interesting that you were talking about how in the beginning we have Sam rationing the food for Frodo and them for the return journey. It's a kind of endearing thing about him that he's always hopeful and stuff.
Yeah.
And Gollum realizes the one thing that he is useful for is, rationing the food for Frodo and Sam. And he uses that against him. They're taking a rest for a little bit. And Gollum decides, I'm going to take the loaf, sprinkle a little bit of crumbs over Sam's jacket to pretend that he was the one who ate it all, and get rid of the rest. And unfortunately, Frodo just believes him.
I know. I don't know if you look at Gollum, but Gollum has this like guilty look on his face when he does, like when they're like, "Oh, what?" Frodo asks how much food is left, and Sam goes to look, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's all gone." And so they're like they're like, "Oh my God, what happens?" And then you see like Gollum there, he's like scratching his head, like kind of trying to not look obvious.
Right. It's an interesting choice.
and then Sam obviously says you took it. And then Gollum was able to play off the fact that he doesn't eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we actually we skipped a bit that we should talk a little bit about as well before this, because before Frodo tells Sam to go home, there's a scene where Frodo is like struggling to get over a cliff edge, and Gollum sees the ring dangling from from Frodo's neck, and Sam kind of like threatens him, and then Gollum again turns the narrative on Sam instead of the fact that he was thinking about taking the ring for himself right then and there.
Right, he was like really playing it up. Like Gollum, it really is sinister, and he's good at playing games. And
he says he's planning on taking the ring for himself, and that's when Sam's like, share the load and stuff, and Frodo, you see it in Frodo's eyes, like he is trying to take the ring from me.
Right, yeah. In that moment, Gollum pulls up Frodo, and he's like, isn't he like sarcastic in saying like Sam is always like nice to him? He's like, oh, such a nice, he's always so nice to me, or something like that.
Yeah, he does do that.
But he's like really good at seeing that Frodo is really easy to influence, and he uses that for his own gain.
And the fact that we have that scene in the beginning of the movie where we have two hobbits fighting over the ring, and then this is paralleled with Smeagol, who was one of those two, or not hobbits, but two river folk, he was one of those two that fought for the ring and won. He's now telling Frodo that's going to happen again. He doesn't tell Frodo exactly what happened when he took the ring, but we know what happened.
Right.
And so we can start to, hope that doesn't happen, because, they're friends. They shouldn't be fighting about this. But in the end, because of the fact that Frodo now thinks Sam ate all the food, and that he's like gluttonous, and that he's more of a burden to keep, Frodo sends him home.
Yeah, and that was like a really sad moment. I know he really sold the pain and like betrayal that in that moment, like he felt betrayed in that moment. Yeah, this I'm telling you, this trilogy, so many good moments.
And I think that's pretty much where we leave Frodo and Sam at this point.
At this part, right, in this first half.
Yeah. So let's jump back over to what's going on with the rest of the Fellowship. They're all kind of together again, and they take the Palantir back to Edoras.
Yes.
And Pippin, being the one who, picked the Palantir up out of the water after Saruman's untimely death, is kind of just like, he can't rest until he sees it again. It's just such a beautiful thing. It's just, he's never seen anything like it. And for whatever reason, he's transfixed. He hasn't been, it's not that he's like called to it or whatever. Or at least we don't know about that. I don't know about that. But it's an interesting scene where everyone's sleeping, except for Legolas, Aragorn, and Pippin.
Right, I think this was an extended edition scene.
It is, yeah. But Legolas and Aragorn are talking about, the eye of the enemy is moving. And it wasn't until Pippin picked up the Palantir and touched it, and Sauron locked onto Pippin's grasp to, communicate with him and, learn the enemy's secrets, that Legolas was like, he's here. And it's such a creepy scene. The idea that, Legolas can tell that the enemy is looking directly at them.
Right, and that he could sense his, presence there.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I don't know if that's just, his elf magic or what, but it's a cool scene.
Right, and Aragorn, they go in, Merry's calling out for help because he saw Pippin the whole time going for it. And that moment where Gandalf is asleep with his eyes wide open.
Yeah, there's some humor involved as well. He gives instead of and taking the Palantir out of Gandalf's hand, he puts the chamber pot next to him, or in his arms, which would have to stink, right? That's disgusting. But
right, Aragorn helps Pippin with the, taking it out of his hands, but you see kind of the effect that it had on Aragorn. He kind of
immobilized him.
Immobilizes him, and he drops it.
Yeah, but it's almost like he's still trying to reach for it as he's dropping it. It's still pulling him. That's just, I guess, Sauron's power is just the draw of evil. And we learn a little bit about what the enemy is planning because of this interaction with Pippin. There's a great again, man, Gandalf is so hard on Pippin. Fool of a took.
Yeah, I know, right?
You start to really grow an appreciation for Pippin here because you started to in the first, or throughout the trilogy, but this is when his strengths really start to manifest. He's an honest person. While he makes mistakes, he is honest about what he did and didn't do. And he didn't tell anything about Frodo or Sam. He didn't give any names away. But instead, he learns about some of the enemy's plans because of visions that he saw. He saw the white tree of Minas Tirith. Right. And the city burning and stuff. So he knew that Gondor was going to be attacked very soon.
Yeah, what was it Gandalf says? He says, I saw no lie in his eye. He's a fool, but he remains an honest fool. Or an honest fool he remains. And then you just see Pippin just kind of
sitting there.
And he's got that dog pout.
Yeah, I feel bad for that hobby. He gets a bad rap. Gandalf does not, of all the hobbits that he cares about, Pippin's the one that he just cannot stand. But he knows to appreciate Pippin.
Right, which is interesting because they find out that Sauron is going to launch a siege against Minas Tirith because of those visions. And so it was an interesting choice of Gandalf taking Pippin with him to Minas Tirith. Yeah, sure, he had the visions, but he essentially told Pippin essentially told everything that he knew. So he really didn't need Pippin that I know of. And so I thought that was an interesting choice. And I love that line that Gandalf says, run, Shadowfax, show us the meaning of haste.
I know, it's so good. Because Pippin saw this vision, he needs to accompany Gandalf on this journey. And there's a great interchange between Merry and Pippin about how it's always him. He's the one who has to you always have to look, or you always have to do this. This is where we see Merry and Pippin break apart. You know, they're the greatest friends of all. You know, you have Frodo and Sam. They're good friends and probably best friends, but Merry and Pippin are like bonded at the waist. You know, there's no separating them until Pippin goes and does this.
Right, for the most part, they've been together. They've been together for all the movies up until this point.
Right. Yeah. It's a really heartbreaking thing because you know they're not brothers, but they're basically brothers. They've been side by side with one another, and Merry says so when he's talking to Aragorn as he watches them leave. That since before they were like tweens or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. So they head over to Gondor, and some of the best like discussions between Gandalf and Pippin. Gandalf thinks he's the dumbest of the dumb. Like he's just like, it's best that you don't talk about Frodo or Sam or Aragorn or this or that.
Right. I think he said don't talk about Frodo and the Ring, don't talk about Aragorn, don't talk about Boromir, and he's like, it's just best if you don't speak at all. Peregrine Took.
Oh man, it's so funny, and you could just see like Pippin's like, yeah, you're probably right. When they go and talk to Denethor, he has already like lost his mind at this point. He is
with grief.
He's in grief. He's clearly kind of consumed with hatred for his other son, Faramir, for whatever reason.
Right.
Basically, that's all he wants to talk about with Gandalf. Not about the army that's coming to Gondor soon, or Aragorn, or anything. He wants to talk about what happened to Boromir, and, you know, Pippin, which I think was right of Pippin to do. Like some of it, at least. The fact that he came forward and said that Boromir died on my behalf. You know, he took many arrows from me. And you see Denethor, like, is angry that Boromir did this for him, but is proud that he died in such a heroic way. So it's almost like a struggle to grasp that.
Right.
But in so doing, Pippin pledges his life to Denethor. And Denethor's like, and I will gladly accept, basically. And Gandalf's like, get up, you fool.
When he pledges himself to Lord Denethor, the look on Gandalf's face is just like, he's like, oh my god.
Gandalf cannot believe how stupid this hobbit is. Like, that's what's happening here. Gandalf is just flabbergasted about, like, the fact that he's even with Pippin at this very moment. And when they go out to like look upon like the rest of the city, Pippin's like, so when are we leaving? And he's like, oh no, there's no leaving now. You're going to be you've pledged yourself to the steward of Gondor.
No. He said Pippin was like, where are we off to next? Or he's like, it's been nice. He's like, oh, it's been nice, so where are we off to next? And Gandalf is like, oh no, help must come to us.
Yeah, it's too late.
Yeah.
The enemy's on their doorstep.
Pretty much. You know, the crazy thing about Minas Tirith is that the area in front of the city is so like vast. It's literally made to be a battleground. Yeah,
and it's, you know, it is a fortress. It's a cool fortress too. Like there's several layers of walled enclosure to the city. It's like, you know, the Attack on Titan city has 3 walls. This has like 5. But they're each like higher levels, and it goes up the mountain, and it's such a cool construction. I wish there was something like that in the real world, where it's like built into the mountainside like that. And, you know, I kind of think of like Petra, but that's just a little thing compared to what Minas Tirith is. But it is cool how they were able to like visualize that, and you felt it was real. You know, the way that the city was constructed and the architecture, it felt real in the movie. Let's talk a little bit about Faramir.
Let's talk about that moment, you know, with them in the Osgiliath.
They're so overrun, you know, in Osgiliath.
There's it shows them at nighttime, and they're like suspicious because they're like, wow, like the side that the orcs are usually on is like just weirdly quiet. So I think it was like the north, I think, that they were waiting for them to be attacked from, and the orcs were sneaking from the river. And the thing, oh my gosh, and I know, and I was watching this yesterday, and like I never really paid attention to this, but this stuck out to me. But these orcs, they were trying to like keep their head low, right? Trying to sneak up on them, but they had torches.
I know.
They had torches and like what was his name? That the orc with the deformed like face and hands. I forgot his name though. I think it was like Gormoth or something like that. Gothmog, yeah. Gothmog tells them to be quiet, and in my mind I'm like, it doesn't matter, they're gonna see you coming with those freaking torches. But it's like really, and then like another mistake that they did, and I know that they kind of had to do it, like the scout, or no, the guard that saw them coming, they killed him, but then he like falls back into like and then he falls back into a whole bunch of other soldiers, and they're like, oh, okay, somebody got killed, they're coming from over here. Faramir, like, he comes and he notices, like, right away, he's like, oh no, they're coming from the river, let's go. And like they were kind of ready for them, but there was just too many orcs.
It's cool that they got ready so quickly. Like, they came up with a battle plan in the moment.
Yeah.
And they all hid behind the pillars, waited for them to infiltrate the city, and then attacked from behind. So they got even though the orcs like had the upper hand in the stealth department, they also had a stealth move that they were able to coordinate very quickly. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
In the end, though, Gothmog takes the city.
Yeah, and that was a pretty long fight, because this is like, it's seemingly in the dead of night when this is happening, and this like battle is continuing. It's still happening, and there's light out. Like, you know, when it cuts back to it, it's day while they're fighting.
Yeah, and then the Nazgul come too, I believe.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, the Nazgul come, not the Witch King of Angmar, but the rest of them, at least.
Right.
So at least some of them are there to sack the city, and they pretty much do it.
They do, and Faramir tells them to retreat to the city.
Yes, so they go back to Gondor, and that's when we have the encounter with Faramir and Denethor.
Yeah, but before that was really cool.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't want to skip a really cool part with Gandalf. They're running to the city, and they're being attacked by the Nazgul.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And then here comes Gandalf, and that like really bright light that he uses to stave off the Nazgul. That was so cool.
That's got to be one of the most beautiful like shots in the movie, because it's far off in the distance.
And the music.
You see like the horses. You see the horses riding. You see the Nazgul, I think 3 of them, flying around them, and Gandalf on Shadowfax with the white light and like the ethereal, like angelic music that sings. It's really cool.
And it goes to show that like how widely people know of Gandalf, because Faramir automatically like calls him Mithrandir.
It's interesting that people of Gondor call him Mithrandir, where other people call him totally different names. And we talked about this in the past, that he has like many, many different names. But it is cool seeing how they could have very easily, for the movies, just called him Gandalf, wherever he went, you know? And we would have been none the wiser. It would have still been a great movie. But the fact that they decided to make it just a little more complicated, you know?
Yeah.
Give this world culture. Give this world different names for different objects or different people.
Right.
It's really cool. You know, they definitely went above and beyond to try and make Tolkien's lore stand out.
So, Denethor and Faramir, they have that moment. Pippin is there, and Denethor sets up, I'm not missing anything, where they set up to take the city back, Osgiliath. And
it's a fool's errand.
really,
You know, there's no way that they can take the city back. They're outmanned, they're outgunned. They have the Nazgul there, and there's really no plan. There's not enough of them, and they're basically just going to their deaths.
yeah, and Faramir knows this.
Yeah,
Because
and he says, he even says like, it's like a last ditch effort for Faramir to gain his father's love and respect. You know, that's all he's doing this for. If this was anyone else, he wouldn't do it. He says it's for Gondor, but it's for his father. He wants to be loved in his father's eyes.
Right. And then remember that like moment of hallucination that Denethor has where he sees Boromir?
Ugh, kills you, man.
It really does. And like it makes you feel bad because like you know that there's probably a moment where Faramir was like finally, but then realizes that his father's just crazy. And it was so sad when he says, "You wish it was me that died and Boromir that had lived." Mm-hmm. And he says, "Yes, I wish it." It's so sad. Because you really do like Faramir's character.
He's one of my favorites in this trilogy, just because of the struggle and the personal battle that he fights alongside the war is just very interesting, and it adds a lot of flavor to the trilogy as a whole, and it gives Boromir new meaning. It gives what happens with the Fellowship new meaning, and everything. It even like helps us understand the relationship a little bit better between Gondor and Rohan, and in terms of like why Denethor is so hellbent on just like being so narrow-minded about like Boromir's the best. Who cares about Gondor? Who cares about my other son? It's really a fascinating.
It really is. It really is fascinating. His character is both like frustrating and tragic at the same time. Yeah.
And there's one of the best scenes. It comes out of that with him asking Pippin if he knows how to sing or if he knows any songs, and Pippin's like, "I do, but nothing that'll be good for basically your great halls and wars and stuff." It ends up being a very like pretty song that Pippin sings.
Right, that
and the actor,
yeah,
the actor actually did that himself. Like,
I think he's a singer. I think he has albums too. Yeah.
What's his name? I think it's Billy Boyd.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very talented individual, and they capitalize on that, and it's a really just tear-jerking scene because you see just the gluttony of Denethor and his high palace, and then you see his son basically going to his doom to an army of hundreds and thousands of orcs and Nazgul and stuff.
Right.
And the song is like, "All shall fade, all shall fade."
Right, and then Pippin, after that song, kind of like he cries to himself because he knows what's about to happen. And in that moment, right before that, with Gandalf and Faramir, where Gandalf tells him to not throw away your life on pretty much a fool's errand, and then he says, "Your father loves you. He will remember before the end."
And I realized
that was a strong moment.
It's a great moment, and there are a couple things that happen throughout the trilogy, and this is how we know that Gandalf is using the great music that comes true. It's almost like preordained lines in time that he is saying aloud. Your father loves you. He will learn it before the end. It's not that he's foretelling the future. He's using a type of magic called the great magic, or the great music rather. And that allows him to will into being this event. It's really cool. I don't know this for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if that kept Faramir alive.
Right.
So.
Right, which he ends up being the only one to come back from that conflict, and he's like hanging off of his horse.
Yeah, good horse. I mean, no, it is actually a good horse.
It is a good horse. It brought him back.
Yeah, it is. But it's crazy. The relationship between man and horse is really cool. They play on that quite a bit in this trilogy.
Yeah, they really do. Like giving horses names and
personalities, and We got a great comment from a listener this past week who took umbrage with the fact that we called Bill the pony Bill the horse.
Oh yeah.
Thought that was funny. Yeah, Bill is a pony, fit for hobbits, but not for Moria.
We upgraded him.
Yeah, we upgraded him to a horse by mistake. Sorry about that. Faramir, he is hanging on to life by a thread, and Denethor, comes out grieving the jerk that he is. Like, he's the one who sent Faramir to his doom, and he gets it in his head that both of his children are dead now, and he makes it about him.
Right. He's like, oh, my line is broken, and this moment shows how disillusioned he is, because at this point, the armies of almost said Gondor, the armies of Mordor have pushed them. They're out on the fields of Pelennor.
Yeah, and he is probably
he's so disillusioned.
Probably for the first time. Probably for the first time. Like, he's so out of it that he's not even paying attention to what's happening outside. And he sees the battle outside, or the battle to come, and he just freaks out. He's just like, abandon your posts, flee for your lives.
And then Gandalf, oh my gosh, let me tell you, I absolutely love Gandalf. Like, he hits him, but like that look of disgust he has for Denethor. Like, he's disgusted with this guy. He said, I am so done with him. And it's funny, like, he does this and like nobody goes and tries to like stop him.
Right. He's like, prepare for battle.
And yeah, that moment, those moments that lead up to that like battle, just, they give me goosebumps.
Yeah, we skipped a couple bits. Like, we should talk a little bit about how they lit the beacons of Amundine.
Right. So yeah, before that happens, they light the beacons, and it was Pippin that does that. This is actually one of his like really like redeeming moments in the movie.
Yeah, he's not an irredeemable character, which is what I like about him. He does in the end become someone worth appreciating, and Gandalf sees this, several times over. Like the time that they're in the battle, and like Pippin basically stabs one of the orcs that's about to attack Gandalf. Gandalf has this moment of like pride.
He does.
In the Hobbit.
Yeah, I love that moment actually, and he calls them. Yeah, he's like, the whole time he's fighting, he's like, "This is no place for a Hobbit." And and then when Pippin does that, like essentially saves Gandalf's life, he says, "Guard of the Citadel, indeed."
Yes, yeah, I love that scene. But so they light the beacons of Amundine, and I like that scene a lot because it just goes to show like how easy it is for Pippin to like be sneaky. He's done it his whole life, so he does it in this scene. But he almost like gets caught off guard because they light so quickly.
Yeah, I love that look. He's like, he lights it and he's happy because he's like, oh, okay, I did it. And then it starts lighting. He's like, oh crap, I need to get down.
Yeah. So there's a great scene, man, where it's like looking over the mountains of New Zealand, and they have little beacons like lining this mountain range, and it's cool because they're able to get this message across to their allies in Rohan.
Yeah, they're far.
Very far. It's probably, well, they said it's a 3 days ride. So
we have to speak in Lord of the Rings speech. They're at least 3 days ride away
by the Nazgul's flight. Yeah.
There you go.
But they're able to communicate this message in the course of a day. I think it's a single, like, they light it in the afternoon. We see the beacons being lit up overnight. And then by the time we're in Edoras and Aragorn sees the beacon is lit, it's morning again. he's having his cup of coffee or whatever, and he just throws the cup, and he's just like, he makes that run, and you could tell like the actor actually gets kind of winded, like by the time he's all the way up the stairs.
yeah, and he's like pushing through. He's like, the bacons are late. Gondor calls for aid.
And there's definitely like an arc to Theoden's character in between the past movie and this movie, because in the last movie he's all where was Gondor when the Westfold fell, and where was Gondor when this happened and that happened, and he doesn't care about Gondor. He's just like, they're not our allies anymore, and they didn't help at Helm's Deep, whatever. But it's at this moment that he realizes what's at stake if Gondor falls.
Yeah.
Because for all intents and purposes, Gondor is a much stronger nation than Rohan.
Right. Their armies are, they have a bigger army than Rohan, and
if Gondor falls, they're
die. Next. Yeah. You already know that he knows that if Gondor's gone, we're out of here. That they're gonna come straight for us. And I like when he says that he's like, and Rohan will answer. And he says, "Muster the Rohirrim," and it plays like the little theme and the Rohan theme in the background.
Yeah, as everyone like starts like preparing for battle, and basically on the third day we march for Gondor and stuff. So basically, he sends Éomer to gather as many men as possible from the nation of Rohan. This is just one city within the country of Rohan. So they grab a bunch of horsemen from this place and that place and this place, and they end up at this pass under the mountain where they're encamping.
Right, and it's really, that area is such a cool area, because down in the most of the army is down in this like ravine or whatever.
Yeah.
And most of like the officers and the king, they're up in like the mountain in this like little I don't even know what to call it, like this like little open area.
Overlook.
It's like an overlook, but it looks so cool when it shows it.
Right, because you can see the chiseled out path that goes up the mountain.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
And you could see people like riding up and down it. It's really, really cool where they set up this is where like the transition for Aragorn happens, and Elrond shows up.
We should talk about Aragorn and Arwen a little bit, because we've kind of neglected that side of the story in our podcast, because I think it's confusing, to be honest. Like, I'm not like the back and forth between Arwen and Aragorn and her father, and her going to the west and her staying in Middle Earth, or she's immortal, or now she's mortal, and she loves him, she loves me not. There's a lot going on with Arwen between the first three the three movies, and essentially we discover in the last movie she leaves Rivendell to head to the west. She's going to take one of the last boats to Valinor. This is something that's preordained for the elves. This is something that's going to happen. It's something that always was going to happen. And she's off, and she has this vision of a future with Aragorn. And she sees life. She sees the sun. She sees a potential future with child. And she knows that her father is seeing this too.
Yeah.
So she kind of breaks away. What's interesting about that scene, I notice it every time and it bothers me. It's clearly footage that's superimposed over the forest. And then they kind of make the kids skip in slow motion and stuff. There's a point where the kid is skipping on grass and they have to bring him up onto another level, which is like the courtyard area where Aragorn is. And because it's a superimposed image, the entire figure, instead of like jumping to get onto the platform, they pivot the entire body in a weird way and then continue the skipping over the courtyard. It's something that I notice every time, and it's just like, I wish they would have fixed that, because it bothers me. It's a weird editing mishap, I guess, but whatever. Early 2000s, I forgive.
Still good.
But anyway, still fantastic, dude. Most everything in this movie just looks so good. So they go back to, she goes back to her father in Rivendell, and tells him that she chooses to live a mortal life. You know, she gave her life to Aragorn, and she's staying one way or the other. The ships have already left, and this breaks Elrond's heart. This is his daughter.
Yeah.
She's choosing him over immortality with the elves.
Right.
But in so doing, he realizes that, you know, there is hope for men if they reforge Andúril, Flame of the West, the sword that you know was broken into the shards of Narsil.
Right. That's the name of the sword before, and when they reforged it, it got that new name.
Oh, Andúril, Flame of the West. Yeah. Sorry, the shards of Narsil, and then Andúril. And I love that line when he delivers the sword. You could tell, what's his name? Hugo Weaving, the actor.
Yeah.
He was so excited to say Andúril, Flame of the West. You know, he says it with such gusto.
Yeah.
It's such a cool scene. But they pull the sword out, they reforge it. I love the visual of like them reforging the sword.
Yeah.
With the broken pieces.
You know, like something that I've noticed throughout these movies is just really the magic of the elves is like super strong.
It's on another level.
It's on another level, and if it weren't for the elves, a lot of things probably wouldn't have happened.
Helm's Deep would have been lost.
And then like next part. Yeah, I like what Elrond says. He says, "Put aside the ranger, and become who you are meant to be."
And I think that's when he realizes that he has to.
Yeah.
If he's going to win the war, and he understands where he has to go, which is into the mountain pass.
Right. He tells him to
cursed.
take the Demalt road to the door under the mountain.
Yes. And it's sad because I feel like he should have probably said something to the men instead of just bouncing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, seriously. Like he could have said like, "Hey, I'll
meet you in Gondor."
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, I have one last effort that I can to help us win this battle, but I need to do this. Don't think I'm trying to flee. I'm just trying to make sure that we win this war. Oh yeah,
but the men like think that he is fleeing because there is no hope. Thankfully, Theoden was there to empower the men. Right,
and then there's that moment like right before he leaves between him and Éowyn, where
yes,
this is where she finally professes her love to him, and he knows this. Like, I mean, he knows this because what is it that he says? He's like, it's nothing but a shadow of a thought that you love, or something like that.
Yes, something like that. And
like he essentially,
I feel so bad for her.
Yeah, it's essentially almost like an insult.
I don't think he's trying.
I don't think he's trying to insult, but the way it came out was very like strong.
Basically he's like, it's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
I can't give you what you want.
Yeah.
And also he says something like,
he says that I cannot give you what you seek.
And you see her like heartbreak in that moment, but she knows. I think she knows deep down like it's not meant to be, but she's worked herself up to thinking it could be because even Theoden earlier was like, he's a very honorable man, and he talked him up a little bit.
Right, and she tries to play it off by saying you're both honorable men.
I know,
and then
it wasn't Theoden King that
right, yeah, like he pretty much like admitted like Aragorn was a big influence in this because I mean the elves showed up for the Battle of Helm's Deep. But yeah, so Aragorn goes to set off, and I love it where like Gimli, like he goes to leave, and then Aragorn's like, no, not this time. And then Legolas shows up with a horse, and he says, have you not heard of the stubbornness of dwarves?
Admit it, laddie, we're going with you.
Yeah. And Aragorn's just kind of like, okay.
Well, he's not even mad. He's just like, yeah, I thought so.
No, he's not mad. He's just kind of like, yeah, like he's like, oh, I figured much so.
Yeah. So they go into the Dimholt Road, and I don't even think Gimli had any idea what they were like getting themselves into at this point. I don't think he knew any of the legends of this past, besides the fact that people didn't come out.
They travel pretty far too, because by the time they get there, it's like daytime.
Yeah, so there's definitely some travel time there, and they're on horseback, so yeah. But they end up getting to this entrance under the mountain. You know, the way is shut. What is it? It's guarded by the dead, and the dead keep it.
Right, and then the way is shut. Yeah, and then the horses run away.
Yeah, I love that. You know, even in this world, horses are so easily spooked, so as to run away. And you know, Brago, this prize award-winning horse, leaves him. But
Yeah,
anyway,
like,
so they go inside, and this is a very funny scene with Gimli. Like, he's kind of the star of the show in this one, in this scene, because he's so out of his element. He's talking about like, they'll never let me live it down if an elf will go underground where a dwarf dares not.
I know, yeah. It's absolutely funny because Aragorn, like, he's like gung ho, he's going in there. Legolas follows straight, like right after Aragorn, and Gimli's like the only one that's very like, I don't want to go. Yeah,
he's feeling trepidation.
But yeah, no, Gimli, he has such a like funny, like him in this moment is just hilarious because
he's like blowing away the
ghostly, yeah, they're like reaching at him. He's like, and he starts like waving away, and then when Aragorn was like, "Don't look down," and it's like a bunch of like bones and skulls and stuff.
Yeah.
And Gimli, like, I mean, he looks down and he's kind of like, "Oh my gosh!" And he's like trying to like walk carefully, but like you hear the loud crunch of bones, and then he starts like kind of like, "Get me out of here!" Gimli's hilarious.
It's interesting because I don't know, like, if this were me, I lived in this universe or whatever. Would I be... I'm sure, yeah, it's creepy, the dead people that you're walking on. But if there's, like, that many, it's, like, almost ridiculous to a point, Like, I guess I'll just keep walking, This is the terrain here. Just a bunch of dead bodies. I don't know if I'd be, like, as scared as Gimli is in this moment.
I think for me, and, this is something that's not, like, obviously explained, but... Like, for me, if I saw that, I don't think the actual sight of so many bones, but, like, for me, it'd be like, okay, there's a lot of bones. There's a lot of dead people here, meaning that I could potentially be getting killed.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Like, what is killing these individuals, and why
is there so many?
Yeah, so it is interesting, and we should actually talk about that. Like, later on, after they like have that interaction with Aragorn, there's like thousands and thousands of skulls that just like fall out of the wall.
Oh, okay. Well, before we get to that, we got to talk about, was it the King of the Dead and the Army of the Dead?
Let's do it.
But yeah, so they get to this like really big area. There's like there's like a spot that it's like kind of carved. It's like a throne, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's like a little it's a outcropping that has a throne in it.
Right, and this is where the King of the Dead shows up, and he says what was over the door. The way is shut, is guarded by the dead, and the dead keep it. The way is shut. And they speak about Aragorn speaks to him and trying to get his allegiance, and this is where like the whole army shows up, and it's a lot. And I think the effect is really cool.
Yeah.
And it shows like ghostly buildings too.
It's almost like this place is so old and ancient that the buildings that were once here are no longer here. So it's almost like the buildings start like appearing where they originally were, And this is like a city of oathbreakers. I think that's actually what they call them, is oathbreakers, because they didn't come to the aid of Gondor in years past. And that's why they are here to begin with. This is why their fate is so locked.
Right, because
it's almost like a purgatory.
Isildur cursed them.
Yes. So they're murderers, they're oathbreakers, they're deserters, people who didn't heed the call of the king when he needed them, basically.
Right.
So basically they get this second chance because Aragorn is the king of Gondor now.
Right. And essentially the king of the dead is just like, he's kind of like laughing it off, like, look at these fools that are in here. And he goes to swing his sword at him, and Aragorn blocks it. And he knows exactly what that sword is. The King of the Dead knows exactly what that sword is, and he freaks out. He's like, that line was broken. And he's like, and Aragorn says the line has been remade. I like that moment though, right before it, where Legolas tries to like shoot him in the head, but that precision was crazy though. I mean, even though it went straight through him, that precision, like if that was like an actual being, that would have been like directly like in the forehead.
Yep.
Aragorn tells him like, hey, if you come fight for us, I will release you from your curse. And they back off, essentially like seemingly saying no, go away. And then the mountain starts crumbling from the inside, and all those skulls. It was like water, but they're coming out like water, but it was skulls.
It's crazy. Like, did someone pile those skulls in there, or is that just like when deserters die? Is that just like how Middle Earth organizes their bones? It's just like, you go in here.
They put them in the walls it's a trap.
Yeah.
So we need to trap people. That would have been a freaking moment. Not so much of like all the skulls, but it was pushing them like towards this like giant like chasm that you couldn't see the bottom.
Mm-hmm. And they make it out alive, and the king.
Whoa. What was it? We can't skip some spot. Like, there's parts that add to the effect before that happens. But Aragorn sees the pirates, and he's defeated. He's like, dude, there's no, like, you see the look on his face, like, there's no way that we're going to win this.
Yeah, because he now realizes that Mordor is attacking on multiple fronts.
On multiple fronts, right?
Not just the fields of Pelennor, but from like the side. They're coming from the river. They're coming from this way and that way. And
right,
he sees defeat.
Right, and then that's when the King of the Dead like shows up and he says, "We fight." And then like I think I remember seeing that as a kid, and you're like, yes. Yeah, you're
just like, what is gonna happen? This is just like that's a definite Deus Ex Machina moment. Like, oh, they have this undead army now. That's right.
Cool. But so there's that there, and then there's like that little moment where with Mary, where Mary, like, he's like, he goes up to remember there's that moment where Mary, like, he pledges himself to Theoden. We missed
Theoden
that.
gladly accepts,
right, and he called him Esquire of Rohan. And then there's that moment where he wanted to go help the fight. Theoden was like, essentially tells him, I think, to go back home, right?
I don't think he tells him to go back home, but he does say, like, the battle's no place for a hobbit. And
that, like, none of his men can, like, take him on. And then, like, Mary's like, I really want to fight.
Yeah, and getting back to Éowyn, like, the night before, like, she kind of, like, is helping Mary, like, prepare for battle and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then Éomer outside just like, you shouldn't encourage him. And he's actually talking about her because he realizes she wants to fight. They've probably had this conversation in the past, Éomer and Éowyn, where she wants to fight in the battle. She wants to do more for her people. And he goes, the battle is a place for only men, basically. And
then he says, I don't doubt his heart, but the reach of his arm.
Yeah, but then he actually gets into like talking about how the like in war.
Yeah.
Once he's confronted by some threat, he's gonna cower. He's not gonna fight like a man.
Right.
And you could tell he's talking about Mary at that point, but he's also talking to his sister, who's planning on fighting.
Yeah.
But you see the resolve in her.
Yeah. Because when the day comes that they go to ride out to Gondor, Eowyn picks up Mary.
Yes, because he's basically told at that point, no, don't come to fight, and he's just like, but I want to, and she picks him up, puts him on her steed, and they head out.
Oh yeah.
And we should talk about our boy Grond a little bit before.
We can talk about Grond. We talked a little bit about the beginning, or we talked a little bit about the beginning of the fight, but we didn't talk too much about the fight.
Yeah, and I think we'll get more into that in the next recording because the majority of the fight is there. But for the time being,
yeah, we're gonna talk about a lot more of the fight, but the fighting does begin in this first half of the movie, and
it's interesting how it starts actually, because they use the fallen dead from Faramir's army. They cut off their heads and throw them across the walls to demoralize the Gondor soldiers and stuff
with catapults. And
yes,
that's like really, it is really crazy. And I do like how Gandalf rallies the troops, and you know that line he says, "Send these foul beasts into the abyss."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when he says that, that's when it's really cool, the different architecture that they use and the different weapons that they use, because the army of Gondor, they use trebuchets instead of catapults.
Yeah, and it's cool because they're using whatever they have to fight, and what they do have is a lot of broken bits and pieces of the city.
I'm like, but like, how did they move it into that giant sling? And that man, that must have like taken a lot, because I mean, there were some big pieces that they used.
some gigantic, like building sized pieces that they threw at these orcs.
Right.
I do love this scene. I remember being in the theater and like being with like friends and family, and when Gothmog, the pink orc, the one that's deformed, is about to get like destroyed by one of those trebuchet like stones. Everyone in the theater was like cheering, like, yeah, because he's just like, don't move, but then he moves out of the way in the last moment. And it just spits on it. And I remember being in the theater and people were like, ah. Oh.
Yeah, and then that troll like is like but yeah, and then yeah, the moment right before the Gandalf fights the orcs is the trolls are pushing these massive towers to the walls. And I thought it was so funny, and you think back on it, but like, Gandalf is like, don't shoot the towers, shoot the trolls. But like, wouldn't you think that you would be killing the things pushing these towers? Obviously these towers are not being damaged by arrows. They're metal towers. Kill the things that are pushing them.
You know, it just goes to show, like, they're easy targets, you know? Like, when you're on the wall, like, shoot the thing that's easiest, because you can't really miss, hopefully. But yeah, you gotta kill the thing that's actually guiding
right
towers.
Right. And so far, like, you know, they're holding off the orcs for a little bit. And yeah, there's that nice moment where Gandalf, he's fighting off the orcs, and like, man, that Gandalf really can throw down in a fight.
He can swing that staff like
that staff and the sword, and it's just like he's using his staff like a bow staff
for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, it's really cool. Like he's a really good fighter, and so at the gates of Gondor, or the gates of Minas Tirith, they're trying the orcs are trying to take down the gate with a regular battering ram, and yeah, like, I mean, it's doing nothing. The people on the walls, the soldiers on the walls are just like picking these orcs like clean. I mean, mountains of like it's like a mountain of bodies there because they're trying to like take down the wall or the gate. Yeah, that's when they pull up your boy Grond. But like before that, I forgot. Remember the Nazgul come up and they start destroying those trebuchets.
Yes.
And
Yeah, the Nazgul, their wrecking house, they're able to like sweep down and take out many men at the same time.
yeah, man, like you see them swoop down and they're clearing out like 20 men. Like, I mean, it's like, they're grabbing, they have like the fell beast that they're riding is like holding 5 in one hand but still clearing out more while they're like they're like destroying these people on the wall.
The Nazgul are just toying with them at this point.
Really, yeah.
And they're trying to break down the front gate to the city, but they're not having any effect. And that's when Gothmog has the bright idea to bring out Grond.
The wolf's head.
The wolf's head, yeah. It's funny that it's named. But it's even funnier to me that they all start chanting, Grond, Grond, Grond.
Right, yeah, they pull up this thing.
It's like a burning wolf's head.
Right. It's like there's fire in the mouth. But this part cuts right before they actually use it, though.
Yes.
But yeah, this first part is essentially the calm before the storm, and then right when the storm starts.
Yeah, so we end basically at a high point here. And I'm excited to watch the rest of the movie because,
it's a giant.
Unfortunately, Return of the King is the one I watch the least. Just
really?
Because it's the one I start. I always start with Fellowship, then I watch the Two Towers, and then most of the time I kind of forget that I'm like I always kind of forget to watch Return of the King. Not that I'd like it any less. I think it is my least favorite of the three. Just because there's so many uncomfortable parts, like Sam's being told to go home, and the Smeagol scene, and there's some like sad Faramir stuff. It's a lot more heartbreaking of a movie, so it's harder for me to watch. It's kind of like Revenge of the Sith is the prequel movie I watched the least because I watched the first two first, and then I either like move on to another thing that I want to watch, or I just don't want to watch the third one because I don't want to see my characters, all get destroyed basically. So for me, yeah, Return of the King is the one I watched the least, and it is my least favorite, but it's not because it's a bad movie. In fact, it's very good.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I like that one. I mean, I love all the movies, with the Two Towers being my favorite. I would say the Two Towers, and then Return of the King on action. The Return of the King is really good to watch, especially for the action, and that's
it's an exciting movie for sure.
But yeah, no, this was the first part.
Yep. So thank you guys so much for listening to us here at Project Geekology for our 32nd episode, the 5th of our 6-part discussion of the fantastic Lord of the Rings film trilogy. Next week, Anthony and I will be jumping into part 2 of The Return of the King, so be sure not to miss out on our discussion. Be sure to find all links to our show and socials in the show notes so you can keep up to date on all Project Geekology news and updates. And if you feel you enjoyed today's show, share it on social media, review it on your preferred podcast application, or talk to us directly online. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Eat fresh. Bye.